Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Misery. Chapter 28. She rolled him over to the window so the sun fell on him for the first time in weeks, and it seemed to him he could feel his pasty white skin dotted here and there with minor bed sores murmur its pleasure and thanks. The window panes were edged on the inside with a tracery of frost, and when he held out his hand he could feel a bubble of cold like a dome around the window. The feel of it was both refreshing and somehow nostalgic, like a note from an old friend. For the first time in weeks, it felt like years, he was able to look at a geography different from that of his room with its unchanging varieties. Blue wallpaper, picture of the Arc de Triomphe, the long, long month of February symbolized by the boy sliding downhill on his sled. He thought that his mind would turn to that boy's face and his stocking cap each January become February, even if he lived to see that change of months another 50 times. He looked into his new world as eagerly as he watched his first movie, Bambi, as a child. The horizon was near. It always was in the Rockies, where longer views of the world were inevitably cut off by unhilted plates of bedrock. The sky was perfect, early morning blue, innocent of clouds. A carpet of green forest climbed the flank of the nearest mountain. For perhaps 70 acres of open ground between the house and the edge of the forest. The snow covered, it was a perfect and blazing white. It was impossible to tell if the land beneath was tilled earth or open meadow. The view of the open square was interrupted by one building, a red barn. When she spoke of her livestock, or when he saw her trudging grimly past the window, breaking her beneath with the imperious prow of her face, he had imagined a ramshackle outbuilding like an illustration from a child's book of ghost stories. Roof tree bowed and sagging from years of snow. Windows blank and dusty. Some broken and blocked with pieces of cardboard. Long double doors perhaps off their tracks and swaying outward. Their neat and tidy structure with its dark paint and neat cream-colored trim looked like the 5-car garage of a well-to-do country squire masquerading as a barn. In front of it stood a Jeep Cherokee, maybe 5 years old, but obviously well cared for. In front of it stood a Jeep Cherokee. To one side stood a Fisher plow in a homemade wooden cradle. To attach the plow to the Jeep, she would only need to drive the Jeep carefully up the cradle so the hooks on the frame match the catches on the pillow and throw the locking king lever on the dashboard. The perfect vehicle for a woman who lived alone and had no neighbor she could call him for help. Except for those dirty, birdy roadymans, of course, and Annie probably wouldn't have taken up the pork chops from them if she was dying of starvation. The driveway was neatly plowed, a testament to the fact that she did indeed use the blade, not that he could see the road, the house cut off from the view. "I see you're admiring my barn, Paul." He looked around, startled. The quick and uncalculated movement woke from his doze. It snarled dully in what remained of his shins, and in the punched small dome that had replaced his left knee. It turned over, needling him from where he lay imprisoned in his cave of bones, and then fell slightly asleep again. She had food on a tray, soft food and valid food, but his stomach growled at the sight of it. As she told him, he saw she was wearing white shoes with crepe soles. "Yes," he said, "very handsome." She put the board on the arms of the wheelchair and then put the tray on the board. She put a chair over him beside him and sat down watching him as he began to eat. "Fiddly foof. Handsome as a handsome does, my mother always said. I keep it nice because if I didn't, the neighbors would yap. They're always looking for a way to get at me or start a rumor about me. So I keep everything nice. Keeping up appearances is very, very important. As far as the barn goes, it really isn't much work as long as you don't get things pile up. Keeping the snow from breaking in the roof is the oogiest part. The oogiest part, he thought. Say that one for Annie Wilkes lexicon in your memoirs. If you ever get the chance to write your memoirs, that is, along with the Dirty Birdie with Fiddly Foof and all the others, which I'm sure will come up in time. 2 years ago, I had Billy Haversham put heat tapes in the roof. You throw a switch and they get hot and melt ice. I want to see how much longer is this winter. See how much it's melting on its own? He had a forkful of egg halfway through his mouth. It stopped in midair as he looked out of the barn. There was a row of icicles along the eave. The tips of these icicles were dripping fast. Each drop sparked as it fell on a narrow canal of ice, which lay at the base of the barn side. It's up to 45 degrees, and it's not even 9 o'clock. Annie was going on gaily as Paul imagined the rear bumper of his Camaro surfacing through the rotted snow for the twinkle on. Of course it won't last. We've got a hard snap for us yet, and probably another big storm as well, but spring is coming. Paul and my mother always used to say that the hope of spring is like the hope of heaven. He put his fork back down on the plate with the egg still on it. Don't you want the last bite? All done? Sure. All done, he agreed, and in his mind he saw the roadie once driving up from the sidewinder. Saw a bright arrow of light strike Mrs. Rodman's face, making her wince and putting his shielding hands up. What's down here, Ham? Don't tell me I'm crazy. There's something down here. Reflection damn near burned my eye out. Back up, I want to take another look. I'll take the tray, she said, and you can get started. She spared him a glance that was very warm. I just can't tell you how excited I am, Paul. She went out, leaving him to sit in the wheelchair and look at the water running from the icicles which clung to the edge of the barn. Chapter 29. I'd like some different paper if you can get it, he said when she came back to the typewriter and paper on board. Different from this, she said, tapping the selling rack package of carousel bomb. Well, this is the most expensive of all. I asked when I went to the paper patch. Didn't your mother tell you the most expensive is not always the best? Annie's brows darkened. Her initial defensiveness had been replaced by indignation. Paul guessed her fury would follow. No, she did not. What she told me, Mr. Smart Guy, is that when you buy cheap, you get cheap. The climate inside her, he had come to discover, was like springtime in the Midwest. She was a woman full of tornadoes waiting to happen. If she had been a farmer observing sky, which had been the look of Andy's face right about now, he would have gone to collect his family and herd them into the storm cellar. Her brow was too white. Her nostrils flared regularly, like the nostrils of an animal scenting fire. Her hands had begun to spring openly and then snatch closed again, catching air and squishing it. His need for her and his vulnerability to her scream at him to back off, to placate her while she was at time, if indeed there was, as a tribe of those Rider Haggard stories that would placate their goddess when she was angry by making her sacrifice the edgery. But there was another part of him, more calculating and less cowed, which reminded him that he could not play the part of Scheherazade if he grew frightened and placatory whenever she stormed. If he did, she would storm all the more. If he didn't have something she badly wants, the part of him reasoned, she would have taken you to the hospital right away or killed you later on to protect herself from the road demons. Because for Annie, the world is full of road demons. For Annie, they're looking behind every bush. If you don't you don't bell this bitch right now, Polly, my boy, you'll never be able to. She was beginning to breathe more rapidly, almost to hyperventilate. The rhythm of her clenching sheets was like why speeding up, and he knew that in a moment she would be on him. Gathering up the little courage he had left, trying desperately to summon exactly the right note of chart and yet almost casual irritability, he said, "You might as well stop that. Getting mad won't change into things." She froze as if he'd slapped her, looking at him wounded. "Annie," he said patiently, this is no big deal. It's a trick," she said. "You don't want to write my book, and so you're making up tricks not to start. I knew you would. Oh boy." but it's not going to work. That's silly, he said. Did I say I wasn't going to start? No, but that's right, because I am. And if you come here and take it to look at something, I'll show you what the problem is. Bring the Webster pot with you, please. The what? Little jars of pens and pencils, he said, on newspapers. Sometimes they call them Webster pots, after Daniel Webster. This is a lie he made up at the spur of the moment. The desire effect. She looked more confused than ever, lost in a specialist world of which she had not the slightest knowledge. The confusion had diffused and thus diffused her rage even more, because he now saw she didn't even know if she had any right to be angry. She brought over the jar of pens and pencils and slammed them down the board and thought, God damn it. Man, no, that wasn't right. Misery had won. But it isn't right either. It was Scheherazade. Scheherazade won. What? She said grumpily. Watch. He opened a package of Carissable and took out the sheet. He took a freshly sharpened pencil and drew a line on the paper. And then he took a ballpoint pen and drew another line parallel to the first. And he slipped his thumb across the slightly waffled surface of the paper. Both lines burned smudgely in the direction his thumb was traveling. The pencil line slightly more than the one she had drawn with the pen. See? So what? Ribbon ink will blur too, he said. It doesn't blur as much as the pencil line, but it's much worse than the ballpoint ink line. Were you going to sit there and rub every page with your thumb? Just the shift of the pages against each other will accomplish plenty of blurring over a period of weeks or even days, he said. And when a manuscript is in work, it gets shifted around a lot. You're always hunting back through to find the name or date. My God, Annie, one of the first things you find out in business is that editors hate reading manuscripts typed on caressable bond almost as much as they hate reading handwritten manuscripts. Don't call it that. I hate it when you call it what? He looked at her, honestly puzzled. Call what? When you pervert the talent God gave you by calling it a business. I hate that. I'm sorry. You ought to be, she said stonily. You might as well call yourself a whore. No, Annie, he thought, suddenly filled with fury. I'm no whore. Fast Cars was not being a whore. That's what killing the goddamn bitch Misery was about, now that I think about it. I was driving to the West Coast to celebrate my liberation from a state of whoredom. What you did was pull me back out of the wreck when I crashed my car and stick me back in the crib again. $2 straight up, $4, I take you around the world. And every now and then I see a flicker in your eyes that tells me a part way back inside knows it too. A jury might let you off by reason of insanity, but not me, Annie, not this kid. A good point, he said. Now I'm going back to the subject of the paper. I'll get your cockadoodie paper, she said sullenly. Just tell me what to get and I'll get it. As long as you stand, I'm on your side. Don't make me laugh. No one has been on my side since my mother died 20 years ago. Believe what you want then, he said. If you're so insecure that you can't believe I'm grateful for you for saving my life, well, that's your problem. He watched her shrewdly and again saw a flicker of uncertainty of wanting to believe in her eyes. Good. Very good. He looked at her with all the sincerity he could muster, and again in his mind he imagined shoving a chunk of glass into her throat. Once and forever letting out the blood that Mr. Crazy Brain. At least she'd be able to believe that I am on the book side. You speak of binding it. I assume that you mean binding the manuscript, the typed pages? That's what I meant. Of course that's what I meant. Yes, you bet, because if you took the manuscript to a printer, it might raise questions. You might be naive about the world of books and publishing, but not that naive. Paul Sheldon is missing, and your printer might remember receiving a book-length manuscript concerning itself Paul Sheldon's most famous character right around the time the man himself disappeared. Mightn't he? And he'd certainly be remembering the instructions so clear any printer could remember them. One printed copy of a non-linked manuscript. Just one. What did it look like, officer? Well, she was a big woman, sort of like a stone idol in an H. Rider Haggard story. Just a minute. I've got her name and address here on the file. Just let me look at the carbon of the invoices. Nothing wrong with the idea either, he said. A bound manuscript can be damned handsome. Looks like a good folio edition. But a book should be lasted a long time, Annie, and if I write this one in Corsival, you're going to have nothing but a bunch of blank pages in 10 years or so. Unless, of course, you put it on the shelf. But she wouldn't do that, would she? Christ, no. She wanted to take it down every day, maybe a few hours. Take it down and gloat over it. An odd stony look had come to her face. He did not like this mullishness, this almost obstinate look of obduration. It made him look nervous. He could calculate her age, but there was something in his new expression that was as opaque as it was childish. You don't have to talk to him anymore, she said. I already told you. Do you all get your paper? What kind? In this business supply store you go to, the paper patch. Yes, the paper patch. Tell him you like 2 reams. A reams is a package of 500 sheets. I know that. I'm not stupid, Paul. I know you're not, he said, becoming more nervous still. The pain had begun to muster up and down his legs again. He was speaking even more shroudly from his idea of a pelvis. It had been sitting up for nearly an hour, and the dislocation down there was complaining about it. Keep it cool, for God's sake. Don't lose everything you've gained. But have I gained anything? Or is it just wishful thinking? Ask for 2 reams of white long-grain Mimeo. Hammermill Bond is a good brand, so is Tri-Modern. 2 reams of Mineo will cost less than 1 package of Corsible, and it should be able to do the whole job, write and rewrite. I'll go right now, she said, getting up suddenly. He looked at her alarmed, understanding that she meant to leave him without his medication again, and sit up as time too. Sitting already hurt. The pain would be monstrous by the time she got back, even if she hurried. You don't have to do that, he said, speaking fast. The Corsible is good enough to start with. After all, I'll have to rewrite anyway. Only a silly person would try to start a good book with a bad tool. She took a package of Corsible Bond and then snatched the shear with 2 smudge lines and crumpled it into a ball. She tossed it with a wastebasket and turned back to him. The stony, obdurate look covered her face like a mask. Her eyes glittered like tarnished dimes. I'm going to town now, he said. I know you want to start as soon as you can, since you're on my side. She spoke these words with intense, smoking sarcasm. And Paul believed more self-hate than she would ever know. So I'm not going to take the time to put you back in your bed. She smiled, a pulling of the lips that was so grotesquely poet-like, and slipped to his side in her silent white nurse's shoes. Her fingers touched his hair. He flinched. He tried not to, but he couldn't help it. Her dead-alive smile widened. Although I expect we have to put off the actual start of Misery's return for a day or 2, perhaps 3. Yes, it might as well be 3 days, Brewster. We'll sit up again, because of the pain. Too bad. I have champagne chilling in the fridge. I'll have to get back to the shed. Annie, really, I can start now if you'll just... No, Paul. She moved to the door and turned, looking at him with a stony face. Only her eyes, those tarnished dimes, were fully alive under the shelf of her brow. There's one I'd like to leave you with. You may think you can fool me or trick me. I know I look slow and stupid, but I'm not stupid, Paul, and I'm not slow. Suddenly, her face broke apart. The stony obduracy shone through the countenance of an insanely eager child. For a moment, Paul thought this extremity of his terror might kill him. Had he thought he gained the upper hand? Could he possibly play Scheherazade when one's captor was insane? She rushed to the room at him, thick legs popping, knees flexing, elbows chopping back and forth in the stale, sickening room like her positions. Her hair bounced and jogged around her face as it came loose from the bobby pins that held it up. Now her passage was not silence. It was like the tread of Goliath striding into the Valley of Bones. The picture of the Arc de Triomphe clacked frigidly on the wall. "Gia!" she screamed and brought her fist down on the bunched dome that had been Paul Sheldon's left knee. He threw his head back and howled, veins standing out in his neck and on his forehead. Pain burst from his knee and shrouded him, widely radiant, in the center of a nova. She tore the typewriter off the board and slammed it down on the mantel. lifting its weights of dead metal as he might have lifted as an empty cardboard box. So you just sit there, she said, lips pulled back in that grinning rictus, and you think about who's in charge here and all the things I can do to hurt you, behave badly, or try to trick me. You can sit there and scream if you want to, because no one can hear you. No one stop here, because they all know Annie Wilkes is crazy. They all know what she did, even if they did find me innocent. She walked back to the door and turned again, and he screamed when he did, in anticipation of another bolt-like charge, and that made her grin more wildly. I'll tell you something else, she said softly. They think I got away with it, and they're right. Think about that, Paul, while I'm trying to get in your cock-a-doodle paper. She left, slamming the bedroom door enough to shake the house. He leaned back in the chair, shaking it all over, trying not to shake it because it hurt, not able to help it. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Again and again, he saw her flying across the room. Again and again, he saw her bring fist down the reins of his knee with the force of an angry drunk hammering on an oak bar. Again and again, he was swallowing that terrible blue-white pain of Noah. Please, God, please, he said. He moaned as the Cherokee started outside with a banging roar. Please, God, please, let this out of this or kill me. Let me out of this or kill me. The roar of the engine faded down the road, and God did neither, and he was left with his tears and his pain, which was now fully awake and raving through his body. And I'm going to stop right there. Thanks for listening.